Focusing now on those financial plans. Get ready to pay higher taxes. That's the main takeaway from today's new provincial budget, which is set to increase your personal income taxes, the provincial sales tax, the school tax, and more. All that, plus a record-breaking deficit of more than $13 billion. To break this all down, let's bring in Rob Shaw at the BC Legislature. Rob, the question going in was, how bad can it be? And it's pretty bad.
It is pretty bad. It's the kind of budget that doesn't really make anyone happy. You got a bunch of tax increases all over the place, but still not enough to avoid the worst deficit and debt in BC's history. Let's get into it here. The nuts and bolts: spending up 4%, revenue and the economy, though, stalled. So the deficit jumps to $13.3 billion, a new record high for the province. There is $800 million in new taxes this year, $4 billion over 3 years. Everybody hit with a half-a-point increase on the first $50,000 in personal income tax. That's about $160 for someone making $150,000 a year. The 7% PST expanded to bookkeeping, cable TV, clothing repair, strata management, and private security, upping the bill, especially for small businesses. The school tax up 0.1% on homes more than $3 million. The speculation and vacancy tax up another percent on foreign owners. There is $1 billion in new spending just to protect these core services you see here. You've got education, healthcare, childcare, income and disability assistance, but there's also $900 million in spending cuts this year. So the Training and Education Savings Grant that gave kids $1,200 towards their RESP, that's gone, along with the rural homeowner benefit. There are 15,000 jobs set to be cut from the public service over 3 years, mostly in management. No immediate layoffs in the civil service. There's 2,500 spots there. Government thinks it can do by attrition and retirement. What is not being cut? The debt, set to skyrocket, up almost 18% this year, $183 billion, more than doubled since the NDP took office. And that means the interest costs on BC's debt, now the third most expensive ministry, surpassing social services. The budget delaying some major capital projects like UVic's student housing, pushed to 2034, as well as long-term care facility in Campbell River. Here's the minister and the opposition today.
We're making very strategic investments in areas that matter to British Columbians. We're not doing those giant cuts that people are calling for. And on the other side, people who say, you can't cut anything, we need to keep spending. But that would drive our debt metrics further, higher, to your point, that even more challenging in terms of, what ministry they replace. We're not doing that either. This budget takes an approach that protects public services and drives down the deficit over time.
When you actually look at the changes they're making to the lowest tax rates, to freezing the tax brackets, to PST changes on things like yarn and basic cable packages, it's very clear who's going to be impacted the most by this, and it's hardworking families and seniors and businesses that are now going to be paying PST on the security guards they need because the government can't get the shoplifting epidemic under control.
Reaction pretty negative here. Teachers and nurses say even stand-pat budgets like this one will degrade services over time. The Greater Vancouver Board of Trade giving the budget a D, the worst in recent history.
There's a lot of questions for local governments, especially around the province's decision to shutter the funding for the Community Housing Fund. There's a lot of applications in the queue right now, and our local government members are going to be finding out that there's no more funds available.
Now, what are the credit agencies going to do with this? It's hard to imagine that there couldn't be another downgrade for British Columbia, which is concerning. And looking at the trajectory, how do we get out of this hole that we put ourselves in?
In times like this, British Columbians rely on government to provide constant, steady services, not just for the most vulnerable in our society, but also, frankly, for the private sector.
Two other things I want to highlight here. The property tax deferral program that a lot of seniors used every year, it's being changed. So the interest rate goes from prime minus 2% to prime plus 2%. That's going to make it more expensive to defer your property taxes. And the $10 a day childcare promise, Stacey. The NDP made that promise over 3 elections, 9 years frozen. Today, as the government reviews that, not looking good for the future of that program. Only 10% of childcare spaces after all that time are actually $10 a day. So a lot at play here, but not the kind of budget you will hear this government bragging about as most people grumble about it in the months ahead.